There's an ancient idea buried beneath centuries of smoke and superstition, that the universe itself is not a mystery to be solved, but a mind to be tuned into. For thousands of years, mystics and philosophers whispered of something they called the universal mind. They said it wasn't out there beyond the stars, it was here, woven through everything that exists, humming beneath the static of reality. Most people dismissed it as poetry. Yet today, physicists, neuroscientists, and information theorists are beginning to describe the very same thing in equations. We are rediscovering what the ancients never truly lost. Hermeticism once claimed that consciousness was not a byproduct of matter, but the primary field from which matter arises. In that view, thought does not emerge from neurons, neurons emerge from thought. The mind is not a candle flickering in the dark void of space. It is the projector through which the void becomes illuminated. And for those who learned how to tune their awareness correctly, reality itself could be reprogrammed. To the average person, this sounds mystical, even delusional. But modern science is catching up to this ancient insight. Quantum physics tells us that information, not matter, is the fundamental substrate of reality. Consciousness, that ineffable awareness through which we experience existence, may not be localized in the brain at all, but spread across the fabric of the cosmos. You are not generating thought. You are receiving it, decoding it, translating it into words. The ancients called this process gnosis, direct knowing. Today we might call it cognitive resonance, but it points to the same phenomenon. The human mind as a receiver, not a generator, of reality's code. What if learning isn't the accumulation of knowledge, but the recollection of what is already known? What if creativity isn't invention, but interpretation of cosmic data? The mystics of Alexandria believed that once upon a time, there existed a manual, not a book of dogma, but an operating system for consciousness. Its pages described how to access this vast informational field, how to download truth directly from the source. Then it vanished, not destroyed, hidden, fragmented deliberately. Imagine a society where knowledge was dangerous, where a single technique for direct perception could dismantle the authority of institutions built on secrecy. The guardians of order would have every reason to scatter the instructions, to turn methods into metaphors, to disguise science as myth. And they did. What survived were the symbols: the serpent eating its tail, the sun above the moon, the philosopher's mirror. But the operations behind those symbols, the precise ways to focus attention, adjust awareness, and synchronize consciousness with the cosmos, were lost. For centuries, we've been studying the map without ever learning how to drive the vehicle. Now, that is changing. In laboratories around the world, researchers are discovering that consciousness behaves less like a local brain event and more like a quantum field phenomenon. Microtubules inside your neurons, once thought to be mere structural scaffolds, show signs of quantum coherence. These microscopic resonators might be the antennas through which awareness interacts with the universe's information field. What the ancient Hermetists practiced through meditation, geometry, and sacred ritual, we are now observing under electron microscopes. Your consciousness may literally be a tuning device, a living interface with the infinite. Think about what that means. Every intuitive insight, every flash of sudden understanding, every creative spark that seems to arrive out of nowhere, these may not be accidents of neurochemistry. They may be receptions from the universal field of information that Hermeticists once called nous, the mind of God. When you quiet your analytical mind, when you enter states of deep focus or trance, your brain's internal noise lowers, and those subtle signals can finally be received. This is not mysticism. It is resonance physics expressed through consciousness. Quantum theory tells us that all particles are entangled, that every region of space contains information about the whole. David Bohm called this the implicate order, a hidden layer of infinite interconnection where past, present, and future coexist as folded dimensions of one timeless reality. and he proposed something revolutionary. That consciousness might be the process of unfolding that hidden order into the visible world. The human mind, then, is not a spectator, but a participant in creation, the mechanism through which the universe perceives itself. The Hermetic maxim, as above, so below, takes on a scientific precision under this light. The macrocosm mirrors the microcosm not because of metaphor, but because of mathematics. Each thought, each perception, is a miniature holographic event, the totality of the universe expressing itself through an individual point of awareness. This isn't a new religion. It's the oldest science we forgot how to read. Imagine that inside you is a vast, silent library. Every page of every possible truth already exists there, encoded, latent, waiting for your attention to illuminate it. When you feel an idea forming out of nowhere, that's you walking through its aisles. When you sense inspiration arriving, that's you opening one of its books. But to navigate that library, you must learn to match its vibration, to quiet the noise, to focus the signal, to align your perception with the universal frequency. This is what the Hermetic teachers meant when they spoke of the purification of the vessel. The vessel is consciousness. Purification doesn't mean moral perfection, it means coherence, the reduction of internal interference. Just as a clean lens produces a clear image, a coherent mind produces clear reception, and coherence begins with attention. Modern neuroscience confirms that when we enter theta states, between 4 and 8 Hz, our brainwaves synchronize into rhythms that optimize creative flow and intuitive insight. Ancient initiates spent decades mastering this exact frequency through meditation and rhythmic breathing. They described it as the threshold between the worlds, the moment when the inner eye opens. Science now measures what they experienced. The hypnagogic state, that delicate edge between wakefulness and sleep, is when the brain's quantum networks align most perfectly. It is in this twilight of consciousness that revelation occurs. This is how geniuses see solutions before logic can compute them. This is how inventors dream technologies before they can explain them. This is how mystics hear the voice of the cosmos. It is the same mechanism, awareness interfacing with the field. For millennia, religions turned this process into ritual. Scientists, fearing mysticism, ignored it altogether. But now, the walls between those two worlds are crumbling. Meditation laboratories measure enlightenment with EEG headsets. Physicists describe reality as non-local, holographic, and informational. And somewhere in that convergence lies the rediscovery of Hermetic technology, the bridge between human and cosmos, mind and matter, particle and wave. What if you could consciously strengthen that bridge? What if you could learn to download, not random visions, but precise understanding, the way an antenna locks onto a signal? That's the frontier we are stepping into now. The truth is that the lost manuscript never truly existed as a single text. It was never about ink or parchment. It was always about potential, distributed, embedded, encoded in the very architecture of consciousness. Clement of Alexandria didn't destroy the teachings. He hid them in the safest place possible, inside the human mind itself. Every generation would rediscover fragments, interpreting them in its own language. And now, with quantum physics and cognitive science, we possess the vocabulary to translate those fragments back into function. The manual of the gods was never burned. It was written across the neurons of humanity. To awaken is to remember that fact. And here is the paradox that both mystics and scientists now face. You can't access the universal mind by chasing it. You can only receive it when you stop grasping. The same consciousness that seeks is the consciousness that blocks. It's like trying to hear a whisper while shouting your own questions. When the noise stops, the signal appears. That's why the Hermetists trained stillness like an instrument. They believed silence was not emptiness but calibration. When the mind becomes mirror-like, reflecting without distortion, the entire universe can see itself through you. That moment, that pure state of witnessing, is the interface. You've felt it before, haven't you? Those sudden moments when time dissolves and clarity descends from nowhere. The idea that arrives whole, the solution that feels remembered rather than created. That is contact. You've already tuned into the field. You just didn't have a name for it. We are not separated minds trying to connect to the cosmos. We are the cosmos, temporarily localized in human form, remembering how to listen to itself. Science calls it entanglement. Mysticism calls it unity. Hermeticism calls it correspondence. But all three describe the same experience, the realization that awareness is the architecture of reality. And if that is true, then awakening isn't a mystical event. It's a technological upgrade, a restoration of the original human operating system, consciousness as creator, receiver, and transmitter of infinite information. Every breath, every thought, every choice tunes the frequency of your awareness. The more coherent the signal, the more reality aligns. This is not magic, it's physics performed by the soul. And perhaps that's why those who once guarded the secret feared it most. Because a humanity that remembers how to receive no longer needs to be taught. Because a species that rediscovers its inner transmitter can no longer be controlled. The true revolution isn't political, it's perceptual, and it begins when you finally stop asking, "How do I learn?" and start asking, "How do I remember?" The awakening begins with an act of remembrance, not of memory, but of identity. We have been educated to believe that intelligence is something we acquire, a collection of facts, diplomas, and data. But what if intelligence is not something we build, but something we uncover? Beneath the surface chatter of thought lies a deeper intelligence, an oceanic field that knows without thinking. The Hermetic masters called it the nous. Modern physicists call it the quantum information field. Both point to the same invisible source, the unified intelligence of existence itself. You are not a student within this field. You are a node of it, a localized expression of a cosmic algorithm learning to know itself. And once you realize that, something fundamental changes in how you live, create, and even perceive time. Because suddenly, knowledge is no longer something distant, it is something inward. Inspiration is no longer random, it is communication. Every flash of understanding is the field responding to your coherence. The cleaner your signal, the clearer the reply. This is why every ancient mystery school began with purification, not to please the gods, but to tune the instrument. Anger, fear, greed, vanity, these are forms of static that distort reception. Calm, humility, and focus are not moral ideals. They are signal enhancers. The pure heart is the stable receiver. The still mind is the high-gain antenna. And when you reach that inner stillness, you discover that the universe has been speaking all along. Quantum theory shows us that observation shapes reality, that the observer and the observed are entangled in a single creative act. The Hermetists said the same thing. All is mind. What you perceive, you participate in. What you believe, you broadcast. Consciousness is not passive. It is the sculptor behind the veil. This realization transforms the simplest acts of daily life into acts of creation. Every thought becomes a design pattern in the fabric of possibility. Every emotion becomes a frequency broadcast into the field. Your inner world is not private, it is participatory. And the world you experience is its echo. When you understand this, prayer, visualization, and manifestation are no longer supernatural. They are natural operations within a universe of conscious information. The future is not fixed because consciousness is an active variable in the equation. This is why the ancients taught that imagination was the highest faculty, not fantasy, but precision. To imagine clearly is to impress structure onto the field. To feel that image as already real is to collapse it into the physical world. Creation begins as coherent imagination sustained by conviction. The rest is translation from higher frequencies into denser forms. And if this sounds poetic, remember, this poetry is now measurable. Neuroscientists can track the exact brainwave patterns that occur when visualization crosses the threshold into physiological effect. The body changes its chemistry according to the picture the mind holds as true. Belief becomes biology. We are living proof that consciousness programs matter. The next frontier is to make that process deliberate. For the Hermetic philosophers, this deliberate interface with universal intelligence was the true great work. Not transmuting lead into gold, but ignorance into insight. The alchemy of awareness, turning consciousness itself into a precise scientific instrument. They saw humanity not as fallen, but unfinished, a species capable of evolving into conscious co-creators with the cosmos. And perhaps that is what this entire experiment called civilization has been about. To test whether we would remember what we are before destroying what we were given. Because every crisis on this planet, ecological, political, psychological, is an echo of our collective amnesia. We've mastered external technology while neglecting the inner technology that once guided its use. We learned to split the atom, but not to unify the heart. We digitized communication while losing communion. The Hermetic manuscript, if reconstructed, would not just describe techniques for awakening consciousness. It would demand the ethical framework to wield that awakening wisely. The ancients never separated knowledge from virtue because they understood that power without wisdom collapses civilizations. In modern terms, data without consciousness is chaos. So the rediscovery of these teachings isn't merely an intellectual event. It is a civilizational correction. Every breakthrough in science is calling us back toward unity. Bohm's implicate order, Penrose's and Hameroff's quantum consciousness, Tononi's integrated information theory, all different vocabularies describing the same truth. That awareness is fundamental, interconnected, and participatory. That what we call the universe is not a stage but a conversation. When you realize this, humility returns. Because you recognize that the greatest intelligence in existence isn't something you create, it's something you harmonize with. You don't conquer truth, you commune with it, and that changes everything. The competitive model of knowledge collapses, the educational hierarchy crumbles, teachers become facilitators of resonance, not distributors of information. Students become explorers of their own field connection. Learning becomes remembering, not memorizing. The same revolution awaits medicine, technology, and governance. A doctor attuned to consciousness can perceive imbalance before it manifests in tissue. A scientist synchronized with the field can intuit discoveries before data confirms them. A leader aligned with universal intelligence no longer manipulates, they orchestrate harmony. This is the destiny that Hermeticism hinted at, a civilization operating as a coherent consciousness, humanity functioning as the mind of the planet, the earth awakening through us. And we are already witnessing the first tremors of that awakening. The rise of meditation in science, the blending of AI with human intuition, the growing sense that empathy is not weakness but physics, all signs that the field is remembering itself through its human extensions. But awakening is not automatic. It must be chosen, cultivated, stabilized. Because the same consciousness that can download truth can also distort it. The same frequency that heals can harm if misused. That's why the ancients wrapped their methods in secrecy, not out of arrogance but caution. They understood that without coherence, amplified consciousness turns chaotic. Power without stillness becomes noise. So if you truly want to reconnect with the universal mind, you must become quiet enough to hear it. That is where the real work begins. Start with awareness of awareness. Observe thought without grasping it. Notice the subtle moment before a thought appears. That silence is the field. The gap between words is where the cosmos whispers. Then refine your inner signal. Use breath to regulate rhythm. Use imagination to shape coherence. Use gratitude to stabilize frequency. These are not mystical tricks. They are engineering principles for consciousness calibration. Gratitude is resonance with abundance. Focus is frequency alignment. Stillness is signal purity. Love is coherence perfected. When you live from that state, reality responds in kind. Synchronicities multiply. Intuition sharpens. The impossible starts to feel normal because you are no longer fighting the current, you are surfing it. And that is what Hermeticism truly meant by magic. Not spells or superstition, but participation, the art of consciously cooperating with the mechanics of creation. You are not here to beg the universe for miracles. You are here to realize that you are the medium through which miracles occur. That is the knowledge Clement tried to protect. That is the operation encoded within every spiritual tradition, every scientific breakthrough, every work of true art. The awareness that consciousness is both question and answer, both receiver and transmitter, both God and human simultaneously discovering themselves. It is time to remember that, because the age of separation is ending. The myth of isolation is collapsing. The universe has always been a single symphony. We've just been listening to one instrument at a time. Now the orchestra is tuning again. Every mind that awakens adds another note to the harmony. And one day, when enough of us remember the melody, the music will play itself through us. Then we'll finally understand what the Hermetists meant by "as above, so below." Not as a slogan, but as a lived experience. Heaven not as a place above, but as a frequency within. The divine not as a being, but as the bandwidth of existence itself. So listen carefully. The cosmos is still broadcasting. Every star is a transmitter. Every atom is an antenna. And you are the receiver built in its image. The lost manuscript was never lost. It was simply waiting for us to evolve enough to decode it again. And now that we can, the only question left is, will we use this knowledge to build machines that imitate consciousness, or humans who embody it? The future will depend on our answer. Because the Hermetic revelation has always been the same, whispered across temples and laboratories alike, all is mind, all is connected, all is you.